Welcome to another episode of What's on the Bench. This is video 2 of the repairs I am doing to my dad's clock. In this video, I will finish the click gear, make the click pull lever and make the click spring.
Very handy attachment, this vertical slide. I had to make a plate to fit the motor to, because originally I just used these two in a T-slot, but the motor wanted to twist, so it flexed every time it was cutting. So this plate, as rough as it is, it does the job, but it attaches, down the bottom up here. I've got T-nuts in there, and also created a stop here to give it a little bit more rigidity, so it wouldn't twist. Because what actually happened is, as I went over to cut, the cutter would push upwards and deflect away. And what actually happened on my first attempt is the tool steel would then work harden because it was rubbing rather than cutting, and yeah, it just made a complete mess of it. But this these I think you can buy for Myfords pretty easily. Maybe not in Australia, but they're definitely available in England. Myford still actually make parts, which is fantastic. I've only had this lathe for a couple of months, and I've been using it ever since. It's just been fantastic. It's done everything I've wanted it to do so far, and I was lucky enough to get some really good attachments with it. I'll work through the attachments. I'll probably do a separate video on the lathe itself and show you what it came with. This is another attachment that came with the lathe. It's a rear tool post holder. It's set up with a parting tool, so it can cut parts off. That's the thickness of the blade there, that little edge. Very handy actually, because normally you would have to mount another tool on here to part off, and I've only got these tool holders. So I would have to sacrifice one of the tool holders to hold a parting tool all the time. So in actual fact, it gives me the capability of parting off, but without actually taking up one of these tool holders, which is fantastic. The Myford has T-slots on its top slide. So this actually allows you to mount the attachments on. As you saw, I had the vertical slide attached before. And now I have the parting tool mounting on there, so I'll clamp this down and be able to part off the click wheel. This Myford, I believe, is about a 1958 model. It comes with this headstock casting, which this is the lubricating system here. Inside here, there's a reservoir where you put in your lubricating oil. Probably can't see it in there, but it goes in through there, and this little dial is what you use to adjust via this window. You can see a drip forming on the end of that fitting, but what you actually do is you adjust this till you get a drip coming off there roughly every 30 seconds, I'm told. And then the hole at the bottom of that window then takes the oil into the headstock bearing, and it's a total loss system, so basically the oil just gets wasted. But it seems very effective. I mean, it just ends up with a lot of oil down here as a result. But that's no big deal. I'm always putting cutting fluids and cutting oil on the job anyway, so yeah. But it's a quirky thing. You have to make sure you turn this off when you finish for the day, or else it'll just drain all the oil out, which is a bit of a pain in the bum. Another feature of this particular model of lathe is it has a hand wheel on the end of the lead screw. This only has one lead screw. It doesn't have a separate feed screw like a lot of other lathes do. You've got a half nut lever, so two half nuts clamp down over the thread inside here when that lever's down, and that engages the screw. The screw is run obviously by the gearbox, and can give you feeds for thread cutting and turning speeds. But what's actually really handy is, because this hand wheel turns the lead screw, you can engage the half nut and then actually control the carriage. Well, if you engage it properly, of course. Is that locked in? You can engage the half nut and then actually use this handle to control the carriage. And it gives you a lot finer adjustment. Also, opposed to using this wheel, it won't draw in as quickly, so it won't grab because it's obviously got to fight against this screw. So it actually is a much better way of controlling the carriage when doing machining work. And I'll probably use it now to set up for the parting off. So that's the original on the left there. I'd say we've had a pretty successful run. Well, it's not perfect, it's not exact, but it's got the right number of teeth, and as long as I make the click itself the same profile as the gear I've made here, there's no reason why it shouldn't function properly. Just a bit of cleaning up. Got to obviously put some flats on the inside diameter so it engages on the barrel shaft, but yeah, for the most part I'm actually pretty bloody happy. So I have to file out the inner diameter to match. This is the original, this is the one I made. I need to match that inside diameter so it will fit over the shaft of the barrel arbor. So what I'm doing is I'm making a little jig that I'll be able to put this in. I'll glue it in with a bit of super glue, and then I'll be able to hopefully file out the edges either way to create those flats in the click gear. So with that glued in there, I will now clamp it in the vise and file it out. These are the files I'll be using for the next job. They're just called needle files. Obviously they're quite fine. They come in different grades, so a coarse, a medium and a fine, and also different shapes. This is a half moon with a flat. There's round, there's square, there's all sorts. I find these handles really convenient. They just screw together. They've got a collar inside that clamps on the needle file handle. They're made by Third, I think it is. Not sure where you buy them, but if I find a link to anything, I'll put it in the comments. And yeah, very handy tools you use often in the shed when either working on watches or clocks. starting to take shape, slowly but surely. I've switched down to finer files, so I'm not removing as much material now as I get closer. Just do the final shape. It's a bit of guesswork, but it just needs to be clearance. It doesn't need to be a firm fit. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of slop. There's really no reason for it to be tight, super tight that is, but we'll just do the best we can with what we've got. To dissolve the super glue, acetone is the best for it, so it'll help clean off any residue on the click gear. And let's just let that sit for a bit. Yeah, that's better. I don't think that's got enough residue on it for my liking, so I'd be quite happy with that. So let's just see how this fits. Yeah, I'd be quite happy with that. It's sits flush with the plate. I should be able to get the retaining clip on that okay. So I'd say that's a winner. So next job will be making the click itself. I will use the same material, tool steel, because I want to heat treat it. It's close enough to 2 mil thick. So I will part off a second disc off the stock. I'll drill the hole in it, and then I'll probably have to cut it out with a wire saw to get that shape and then file it to shape. So it's going to be a bit of handwork, but as long as I can replicate that shape, I should be in luck. So here is the disc I've just parted off on the lathe in the same tool steel. It's I made it 2.3 millimeters thick because the click gear is 2.3 millimeters thick, so at least they'll match. And all I need to do now is essentially line those holes up, trace around that click, and then cut it out with a saw. So that should be enough of a guide for me to get the shape. I need to be careful that I actually don't cut too much off. I'll cut obviously to the outside of the line, but I also need to leave a little bit around the nose of it where it engages with the click gear, because that profile is close but slightly different, so I just want to make sure I can get it to engage properly with the click gear. This is what's known as a piercing saw, or a wire saw, or a jeweler's saw. Has a very fine blade that allows you to do profiles so you can turn while you're cutting. They're very fragile, the blades. You'll definitely snap them. It's just part of the fun. I actually bought this when I got into doing a little bit of jewelry, just as a dabble. Didn't really do much with it, but at least I got the equipment and now it's going to come in handy. As you can see, the cutting's quite slow with these. It's just the way it is. They're a small blade with small teeth, so it takes some time to remove material. Probably what's really important is a rigid setup. I don't quite have the best rigidity here. I should make something a bit better for this kind of job. So there's the click roughly cut out. That's it sitting next to the click gear. I will file the profile to suit the click gear so it engages properly and we get a good nice finish. After that, I'll emery paper it back, heat treat it, then polish it, and hopefully we'll have a proper finished product. Now it comes down to filing the click into shape. This is just the rough file at this stage. Let's just take our time with it. Here is the click gear and the click pole lever, emery papered, cleaned up, now ready for heat treatment. So generally the heat treatment process involves heating them up till they're cherry red, dipping them in oil, which then changes the structure of the material, makes it very hard, and then after that you then have to temper it by slowly heating it to about a straw colour and then letting it cool naturally, and that will give us a sufficiently hard component. Here I've got the parts just mounted on some stainless steel wire so they're easy to hold so I can heat them and then dip them in the oil. Here we go. There we go, that's the first stage. Now what I do is clean the oil off, give them a bit of a scrub, and then we'll temper them. Okay, they're cleaned up okay. The reason we temper the material is because when you first initially harden it the way I just did, you end up with like the maximum hardness. And that makes them also very brittle, prone to chipping, cracking, splitting, whatever, and the material is under stress. The idea of tempering brings that down to a more realistic hardness where they've still got a bit of durability. So generally you can go by just looking at the colour. They say a straw colour is what you should be looking for when heating. So let's just see how that goes. probably one of the best ways to check for hardness is just get a file and run it over what you've just heat treated. And it should just glide off. It shouldn't take any material. It's too hard for the file to grab and cut. So that's sufficiently hard. Just gave these a quick hit with the polishing buff. They've come out quite nice. I'm happy with those. So now I'm going to make the stud for the click pole, and then I'll have to make the spring. So here's the pole lever screw. It's finished. Unfortunately, I stuffed up the videos and lost them all of the steps of making it. So you're going to miss out on that. But I will do the heat treatment now. So we'll see a different technique used there for heat treating. So this is probably how I should have shown you how we do heat treatment normally. We use brass filings in a crucible with the part sitting in the brass filings. The idea of that is we heat from underneath, the heat dissipates through the brass and then through the part. So you get a more even sort of heating. The way I did it before was a bit, cowboyish, but still quite effective. I am using a trade flame blowtorch, which is like using a sledgehammer to put in a nail. Probably could do with a smaller torch, but it's what I've got for now. So let's heat this thing up and dip it. Okay, let's just test it for hardness. Yep, the file just skids across it, not gripping or cutting. Perfect. This is where the brass comes in real handy for even heat distribution when tempering. So hopefully we'll get to see a better straw colour this time with the heat distribution being hopefully a little bit more even. Let's just It looks rather blue on the camera, but interestingly, it's pretty much the same color as the brass filings. So it's probably not displaying it quite as well as I'd hoped to you guys. But that is probably tempered to a nice straw color. Actually, it has turned out a little bit darker than expected. I think I need to refine my heat treatment techniques a bit better. But it does appear to have tempered okay. It's a little soft, but I think that will probably still do us okay. Well, there it is. Hardened, polished, ready to go together. So there's the click and the click lever in place. It seems to mesh quite well. There is a little bit of tension on this now. Just take that tension off. And it actually works quite well. Once a spring is made to hold it into place, it should do as it's meant to. So let's start trying to figure out how to make the spring. This is what I'm intending on using to make the spring. I'm going to try and cut a little slither out on it, mount it on a little block, and then screw it to the plate pushing on the back of the pawl lever. There's plenty of material here, so it might take a couple of iterations to get it right. But yeah, I didn't really have anything else around that was springy enough to do the job, but hopefully this will work. So I've just cut a slither of the spring steel down, filed it to size. That will hopefully work out all right. The block will mount on these two holes, and the spring will sort of sit this side, pushing the pawl back that way. Exactly how I'm going to attach this slither of spring to the block, I'm not quite sure if I can drill holes through it sufficiently to tap it to a little. I'm going to make a little brass block to sit over these two holes and then screw down into them. I'll tap these two holes out. That's the plan anyway. Got this little block of brass. It's about the right size. I reckon I can make that work. First thing to do is sort of file it up into shape. I really could do with a smaller vise for these kinds of jobs, but get by with what I've got. It's a decent vise. One size suits all, eh? Oh, that's it. That looks like all sides cleaned up neat. I'm only filing this rather than milling. I don't have the need to mill something like this. I can freehand it quite easily. What I'm going to attempt with this one is I'm going to use the jeweler's saw or the wire saw to cut a slot in the block for this to slide into. I want it to be a neat fit so it holds in place. It'll probably stick out something like that in order to touch on the pawl lever. Don't know if it'll work, but I'm going to give it a go. It'll take some time to get to the right depth, but I think this might work. So I've made the block too small. There's not going to be enough room for the holes on this other edge, on the larger edge, to screw it on, but that's all right. It gave me a bit of practice with the jeweler's saw, or piercing saw. I'm gonna just cut another slither and see if it actually presses into the cut and test my theory. Well, it fits. So that's a good sign. I should be able to use that method. Okay, so I've decided to do things a little different. Pushing in the spring in a slot didn't really work out as planned. It just didn't sit right. It was splitting the brass block. This is the brass block I've made. It's a little unsightly at the moment. I will clean it up and make it a little more practical. But what I've decided to do is drill a hole, tapped M2, and I'm going to drill a hole in the side of this new spring I've cut, and I will bolt it on with a little stud and a nut. I'll also put a block of brass over the top, because what I want to happen is when that spring bends back, I want it to rest against a hard surface. I don't want it to pivot, so to speak, from where the stud is, because that'll focus all the energy on that, and it will just bend back and forth and eventually break like the previous one did. So if I put a block to support it behind, it'll create a nicer transition for that spring. So that's what I'm about to work on. I'm just going to make a little slither, drill a hole in this, and hopefully we'll have a assembly to put onto the clock. This is my drill press. It's an old wall down. Does the job. Great machine. Runs pretty true. I guess not so good when getting to the smaller stuff, but for the most part it does what I need to do. Just drilling the hole here in the little mount block. I'll once I fit that up, I'll file a little radius on it to help transition the spring into a smoother arc, and we'll have a look at it then. Okay, so I've made the little plate. As you can see, I've put a little transition in that plate to give the plate something to work around. I didn't want a sharp edge, like I say, focusing the bend in a small spot, so that should relieve some stresses. Trying to mark out the spring to figure out where to put the hole. Bit hard to line up, but I should be able to scribe the center there, and hopefully the center in this direction, and that'll give me a pretty good location. It's not the end of the world if it's a little bit out. I can elongate the hole or file the outside to suit, but hopefully that will give me something to work with. My first mark at the top was a little bit out, so I redid one a little lower, but that should give me the whole center. I use this ground center to help locate my holes. It's made from carbide. It's pretty fine, but if you line it up carefully, you can generally get an idea of where it should sit. So that looks pretty good in that direction. The the chuck does run relatively true, so I do find that when I put the drill bit in, it actually is on target. So yeah, that's what I use. Alright, well that looks like it worked out pretty good. Lines up and fits neatly. A little bit of movement, but I'm not too fussed about that. That's pretty much what I wanted. I'll obviously cut this to length once I've established how it sits on the clock. So here's the final assembly. Quite happy with that. There's a nice gap for the spring to flex. Like I say, the block is a little on the ugly side, but I'll neaten it up and file some of these edges back and polish it up a little bit too. Alright, all cleaned up, ready to be put on the clock. Like I say, it's still not the prettiest block compared to the rest of the clock, but look, I was going for function anyway. This will certainly do the job. Like I say, with the spring the way it is, it's quite sturdy. The block is mounted a lot better. The spring blade is attached a lot better, and in conjunction with the pole lever and the click gear, I think it's going to be quite a good job. And let's see how it works out. Here it is assembled. Had to tweak the spring a little to get it to sort of sit at the back of the pole lever neatly. The click lever is engaging nicely with the spring, so you know it doesn't really have to do much other than just push it. But let's see how it winds. Well, I'd say that does exactly what I want it to do. I'd say that's a success story. What I'll do now is I'll reassemble the clock. I'm not going to do much to the clock. I'm not going to pull it apart and clean it. It was working fine to start with. It's relatively clean. I'll probably just rinse out the pivots and re-oil them just so it's all lubricated. And I'll check the timing and so on and so forth. But I'd say that is job done.